Oklahoma State has been having success in the transfer portal. Why is that?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into The Portal. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making The Portal your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some recruiting with me. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Today's show is all about the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and despite a very disappointing season this past year, they're kicking butt in the portal. And to help me make sense of it all is Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State. What is going on, man? Like, what are y'all doing in Stillwater? I didn't think that was a party town, but y'all partying in the portal.
Well, we are, and it's actually funny that you bring up the fact that you're being pretty kind when you say disappointing for last season. I would say absolutely devastating would be a better verbiage here. But nonetheless, yes, Oklahoma State finally has a reason to be on the show because we're not typically big into the portal, but we are big-time portal guys right now, and we're getting dudes that we've never got at Oklahoma State, point blank period. We've got a 5-star Chindavian Bradley, went to Tennessee, then went to JUCO route. Now he's in Stillwater, America. J.K. Johnson was a top 50, 247 projected second-round guy, went to Ohio State, then LSU. Now he's a Cowboy. Mordecai McDaniel turned down Bama, Georgia, Florida, or Tennessee, and everybody else, Penn State included, to go to Florida. And a lot of this has connections to Todd Grantham, Oklahoma State's new defensive coordinator, who has over 11 years of NFL experience and almost equal amount in the SEC. He's been through the Nick Saban retraining school, and his connections back at Florida, including some of the staff, right? He brought a lot of this staff with him from the 2016, 2015 Mississippi State days over to Florida, and then they kind of bridged off over to the NFL. Those dudes have brought guys to Stillwater that we've never gotten before. It just is what it is. We also got the number 3 ranked defensive end in the country from the JUCO ranks, and Rashad Bradley. This is a transfer class that Oklahoma State country needs to be proud of because this is new territory for us, and I don't think it's unfair to just admit it, right? We hover in the 50s and 60s in recruiting, sometimes in the 40s, but when it comes to the transfer market, we're never super involved. This is a massive year, and this is the year of restoration in Stillwater, America.
Well, that brings up the obvious question. There was a guy by the name of T. Boone Pickens that had a little money to throw around for facilities back in the day. You're an oil school like a lot of the Texas and Oklahoma schools. I'm guessing the NIL there is available when the boosters think there's a chance for something to go right.
Well, yeah, I think that's even indicative of last year, brother. Like, there was an onus to get behind the NIL contributions from Ollie Gordon, Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, even Alan Bowman, and the entirety of the offensive line. Those individuals were able to get more than enough money to stay put, which is how we brought back 20 returning starters. Now, that is a different story, a different conversation. But from a recruiting angle, we have proven in the past that this is not necessarily a destination place, right? There's not a lot to do in Stillwater. But if you're about your business and you're trying to buckle down and prove something to get to the next level, Stillwater is a perfect place to do so. And that's kind of why I feel like a lot of these former 4-star, 5-star level guys are coming to Stillwater. There's not a lot of distractions. There's nothing big, fancy, or sexy running around Stillwater. But you got to get prepared for your profession, essentially, and it allows the ability to do so.
Well, I think the portal, if you use it right, can be good. I cover Florida State. I've covered Auburn. I've covered Miami. I've covered all kinds of schools down south in the traditional Dixie area. There's been a really big mixed bag with the guys that were like a J.K. Johnson, elite recruit. That's boom or bust. There's never an in-between with them. Look at Florida State last year.
Kind of wild, yeah.
They took a bunch of kids from Bama and Georgia, and they went into the gully. So I have no idea what they evaluated at Oak State, but they did need something different because they obviously, even though they had a bad season, they lost a bunch of guys too because they had a lot of seniors. Correct. So Ollie Gordon is no longer there. I mean, doesn't get a much better running back, etc. Are you concerned about the chemistry in the locker room? Because obviously last year that had to have been some kind of problem because nothing went right. So
I'm no longer concerned, and I wasn't necessarily concerned last year, right? But one of the things that I've gotten from the conversations I've had with the players in the offseasons, the ones that are still Cowboys, including a few of the gentlemen that have left Oklahoma State, was the common consensus was there was a lot of complacency from the coaching staff because a lot of the coaches had been there for 8 years, 12 years, 14 years, 17 years, and likewise, most of the roster had been there for 4, 5, 6 years. They all thought that everybody was taking care of things without checking on each other. Does that make sense? There was no delegation of responsibilities. The coaches thought the seniors were taking care of it. The seniors thought the juniors were taking care of it. And there just wasn't a lot of accountability. So the guys that are remaining, they're insanely excited. No disrespect to the coaches that left, but they needed this invigoration of new blood in Stillwater, America. And they're getting more technical aspects to them that they did not get last year. I've had a couple different players point blank tell me that I learned more in the last week than I did all year last year. Now, again, does that mean that the coaching was bad? No, it just means that there was some complacency going on and there wasn't a lot of everybody checking the boxes to make sure that everybody was doing their job. It's entirely different right now, and the excitement is through the roof for the remaining guys.
Well, I think that's important. If you don't have leadership, whether it's a common business, it could be the local cleaner that you drop off your dress shirt. They ain't got leadership there. They fail too. So talent is the first step. But for those that are out there that are Oak State fans, just remember, getting the talent is step number one.
I see what you did there, Brian. It's almost like you've done this before, making the cleaner comments. Yes, we did get taken to the cleaner. How dare you bring this up?
It's true. I couldn't believe how bad they were watching them early on. I'm like, this team's getting ready to quit. Like, it was just unbelievable how bad it was.
We did. There was no it's about to happen. We had players physically walking and jogging on the field live during games, and I didn't think I'd ever see that in collegiate ball, but it happens.
Well, on that point, before we jump into the next part of this, do you think that the coaches learned their lesson on whatever it was? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones accountable. They're the ones under contract. Do you think they've changed anything, or they're at least going to incorporate it during off-season conditioning and all that as they prepare for the spring portal? Like, what's going to be different so the players they just signed out of high school and the portal are going to make it?
Well, I think the biggest emphasis is the fact that there's a completely clean slate, right? We've got like 17 new coaches in Stillwater, America, which is completely new. And one of the biggest differences, I think, is going to come from Mike Gundy, because accountability does have to start from the top, right? Whenever you fire the entire staff, literally like 90-something% of the staff is gone. They've all been replaced. And remember the Board of Regents fiasco where Mike Gundy may or may not have been the coach for a couple hours in Stillwater, Oklahoma? I think a lot of that, even though it maybe wasn't the greatest look from a national perspective, I think it did drive Mike Gundy a little bit for him to realize that, okay, I've got to change this thing up because this is now a business. Not just from the player's perspective, but now the Board of Regents is looking at this. Well, if there's more realignment, how does Oklahoma State stack up in the next round? If Oklahoma State keeps having 3-9 seasons, they're not going to be a part of it. So I think Mike Gundy sees a different edge of the business front now that has allowed him to be a little bit more of a CEO role, right? Shaking hands, kissing babies, taking the helicopter to do more recruiting. He's come out and said that Todd Grantham is the head coach of the defense. He's not going to mess with him. He's going to let him recruit how he wants, coach how he wants, scout how he wants. And that is new. That is new for Mike Gundy. It is new for Oklahoma State. And I think it's a good thing in this ever-changing landscape of college football we find ourselves in.
When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the key players for Oklahoma State next year, a few of the key add-ons, maybe a high school kid or two that Cody might be interested in talking about. Oklahoma State, by the way, they're famous for finding the under-the-radar guy. They really are. It's why it's one of the more fascinating programs from a big box perspective in college football. That is next here on The Portal. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you, curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. With Gametime Picks, it's something that I've used. you can find things quicker. And I'm not the most patient guy. It also allows you to look at something right on the screen. You just click the Gametime Picks function, and it'll narrow it down on prices and the best seat deals for you. Also, speaking of seats, one of the best features about Gametime, if you click on the seat on your phone right in front of your face, you can see your view from that seat to the pitcher's mound. Maybe it's to the orchestra that you're taking your wife to. Maybe it's a movie after dinner with your wife, whatever it is, sports, music, theater, Gametime has you covered. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Cody, as we go into the second section of the show, give me at least one guy that you think as a freshman will have a contribution to Oklahoma State, and tell us why.
Well, I really think that it's going to be Royal Capel as a wide receiver at a Sabilo. This is a dude that can take the top of the defense, but he has a lot of the vertical capabilities. And Oklahoma State is famous for dropping that 9-ball fade into the end zone. So you've got to have a Des Bryant, Justin Blackman, Tylan Wallace, Tay Martin. You've got to have that kind of guy. And I think from a wide receiver perspective, we've got some candidates, but I think Royal Capel as a freshman is going to be very, very hard to keep off the field.
Do you think, Gundy's been there. How many years has Gundy been at Oak State? 17, 18?
20 now.
20.
We're in year 20, buddy.
Okay. Do you think that it's pretty easy to pick up the offense? Because some offenses, like Ohio State, that's a different deal. Yeah, they do some different things. Is it easy enough for a freshman to do that consistently at State, assuming obviously you have talent? Or is it a little harder to pick up Gundy's scheme?
Well, I think from a previous standpoint, it was pretty easy because Mike Gundy was pretty seamless in his offenses, which is why he brought in coordinators to run his system instead of bringing in coordinators to implement their own system, right? But Doug Meacham is a little bit different, yet he's also a little bit of a bridge because Doug Meacham was here in the beginning of Mike Gundy's tenure in 2005. He was the guy who recruited the Des Bryants and the Zach Robinsons and the Kendall Hunters. That was all Doug Meacham. So some of the biggest wide receivers we've ever had at Oklahoma State, some of the best offenses we've ever had at Oklahoma State, including the years under Dagan Holgerson and Todd Monken, Doug Meacham was there for all of it. So I think Doug Meacham's going to be able to blend the offense that kind of made Oklahoma State what it is with what he was running most previously at TCU before they made their national championship run. And of course, TCU was able to keep him on for years because of his recruiting acumen and his ability to not only coach, but bring in wide receivers, which I think is huge because Casey Dunn was not a very good offensive coordinator, but he was a legend when it came to development of wide receivers. Doug Meacham does provide a little bit of that old school system that Mike Gundy obviously covets, but he's done enough of the new style of offense that I think the implementation is going to be pretty easy. And not to mention, he is bringing Haas Haney with him.
Well, that kind of helps. Very athletic.
Kind of helps. Yeah. I know you remember Haas Haney, 4-star, 92 overall rating coming out of high school. Everybody wanted him, but he had a very good connection with Kevin Johns. So he originally committed to Duke when Kevin Johns was at Duke, and then TCU was kind of like a dream school scenario. When Oklahoma State got Kevin Johns from OU and we got Doug Meacham, it almost felt like it was meant to be that we would end up getting Haas Haney. And Haas Haney hasn't got to show what his arm could do at the collegiate level, but from a speed perspective, he was clocked last year as a true freshman at TCU at 21.7 miles an hour. They brought him in as kind of a wildcat guy, a 4th-and-1 kind of guy. And you already know, as a true freshman at this level, if you're so good that the coaches have to find ways to get you on the field, you're probably going to end up being pretty successful in the end.
Well, he was a kid in high school. I always laughed when I was watching his film when they would blitz him. Guy would take like a bad angle or something. I'm like, you moron.
You can't do that against somebody who runs a 10.6 100-meter.
Yeah, like he was sub 4.4 if I remember right a few times. Like he was really, really fast. So I'm curious to see what Gundy does with him. And to that, I might as well just ask, quarterback situation, who's competing this year for the starting gig?
Well, I thought you never would, Brian. So it's going to be the veteran that's been here for almost 4 years now, Garrett Rangel. Obviously, he's going to bring a lot of experience. But again, this is going to be a completely new offense for the most part with Doug Meacham coming in. Again, it's going to be a blend of some of the new stuff, some of the old stuff. But then you saw at the tail end of this previous season that Maluiake Smith ended up being not only adequate at this level, but he was able to guide us to some victories. And then you have the heralded Mr. Nebraska, Zane Flores, who's been building up. He's now 6'4", 215 pounds, should be able to provide a decent amount of athleticism. And then there's, of course, Haas Haney, who we don't know what he's going to be able to kind of provide from a passing perspective yet. But here's the benefit, and this kind of goes to your last question as well. What the offense is not going to have to worry about when it comes to the implementation of the system is all four of them are mobile, right? So if you're going through the projection of the reads, you already know if there's a blitz or if there's something that can break down, your ability to get out and scramble allows you much more capabilities because you already know the wide receiver will always have the advantage in the scramble drill. It is because now the DB's chasing a wide receiver. So having a mobile quarterback from a numerical perspective does so much that I think it'll allow all of them to pick this thing up pretty seamlessly.
Well, it would be good for college football, in my opinion, if Oklahoma State was, let's say, going into the middle part of November, like 7-3 or something this next year, or in their last couple games, because it's more fun and they got options. The one thing that I trust Gundy with more than anything is the guy, well, we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. That's when he's better for some reason. I don't know why that is. It's very random.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to ask you to try to explain it because I'm not sure that Gundy could.
No, you're right. When expectations are high, those are typically our most disappointing seasons. And it's got to do something with the target on your back, right? I think you can look at Ollie Gordon. Yeah. 2 years ago, nobody could stop Ollie Gordon. That's why he won the Doak Walker Award and ran for almost 1,800 yards. The very next year, everybody and their mom knew how to stop Ollie Gordon, right? So it's just the differentiation year after year is something that you have to adapt to, and we just weren't able to do that this previous year. But I have a good feeling that these guys coming in, they have something to prove too, right? These coaches, yes, it's a clean slate, which means that all the returning guys, all the new guys, all the freshmen, they're all going to have even opportunity to play. But Todd Grantham's got to prove something. He's getting up there in age. If he wants to be a head coach, whether it be the NFL or at this level, he's got to make something to happen. Just like Doug Meacham, like he's getting up there in age. These dudes are going to take this as their ability to kind of catapult the next part of their career, and they're going to do it with a lot of the talent that they've brought in.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. When we come back, I want to get a broader sense. Is Cody going to be crying again in 2025 when the season starts? Are they going to surprise some people? Where's that going to go? That is next here on The Portal. All right, Cody. We've talked about the portal additions, etc. Before you give like a hard line, give me the position that you think they haven't at least yet. For those that don't know, the portal is open again. There's a 10-day window after spring ball. So there's a possibility Oak State or anybody else for that matter could pick up somebody else. But what position are you most concerned about as you get ready for spring ball at Oklahoma State?
I think if we're just talking about the ability to add some depth, I think offensive line is still a little bit of a need. I do like the freshman Jalen Beckley coming in. I think he's going to be a massive addition that will have the ability to at least compete for immediate playing time. But when it comes to the depth, right, we lost 7 seniors last year on the offensive line. Regardless of how their season went, that's a lot of guys. So we were returning like 223 starts last year on the O-line. All of that, literally every single start of that is essentially gone. So we're rebuilding the offensive line, and I think that if you could get one more heavy hitter, it would make you feel a lot better about the situation coming into the season because we're going to have to lean on the run, especially when you have a mobile quarterback. And if you look at Doug Meacham's previous systems, right, he made Trayvon Boykin famous. Before Doug Meacham, Trayvon Boykin had like 1,200 yards. The very next year, he has 3,900 yards because of Doug Meacham. So I think the mobile quarterback is going to help, but the offensive line was a massive issue this previous season.
Well, I know that offensive line is one of the most difficult places to find quality players. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, and this has been the case, and I've followed recruiting since late 80s, early 90s, linemen bond, they typically stick around, they pick up their degree, even if they're not starting, then they'll go grad transfer.
Yep.
But you don't see that many kids leave unless they're just getting a boatload of money to transfer to, OU or Texas or Florida
Hmm.
or something. They just don't. So good luck on finding that guy because there aren't many of them, brother. I know that. But now for the big box question, two-parter: is the Big 12 just flipping the schedule like who you played last year? You play up or what? It's brand new.
Yep.
Oh boy,
It's completely different.
1 to 10, 10 being most difficult. Where's Oak State's Big 12 schedule?
Man, I don't know. Since the Big 12 is more bipolar than my ex-wife, I couldn't tell you. You could pin a tail on a donkey picking the Big 12, but I would assume that it's probably mid-tier because we do have 7 home games. So
That's
and
helpful.
right, and some of the better teams do have to come to Stillwater. K-State's got to come to Stillwater. Iowa State's going to have to come to Stillwater, and I think that does give us a good positioning in the conference. But this conference is so wild, wacky, and crazy. We don't know what's going to happen one Saturday to the next, brother man. Being a betting man in this conference is a disaster.
There's a lot of truth in that. Like Baylor a few years ago won the league, turned around, they were awful. Oklahoma State was projected by you, me, and many others to win the league last year. They were
Yep.
awful. It's
Yep.
just really hard from year to year. I mean, if I
Well,
had
and I
to,
was giving BYU a hard time because they only won 5 games and they only brought in like 5 transfer guys. So I was giving some BYU people a hard time, like, you guys weren't very good and you didn't even try to get anybody in the transfer portal. What makes you think you're going to be better? Joke's on us because Kalani Sitake evidently knew he had more than enough dudes. So yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. Arizona State,
they were
33-year-old
3-9.
coach. They're in a rebuild. It's going to take a while. Nope. 2 years later, they're in the playoff, and they gave Texas a whale of a game.
Yeah, they were really close. If a certain call at midfield had been different, anyway. Um, with that, who's the guy that is going to be your best? Like this guy's going to make a step up. Oak State fans, and quite frankly, college football fans need to take note of this player for Oklahoma State. Who's it going to be?
Well, I go back and forth, but I think I'm going to go with Brian McCoy because Nick Martin was our last NFL caliber linebacker. We just watched him in the Senior Bowl. He was one of the tops in all of the lead up of the practices of the Senior Bowl. Led the country in tackles 2 years ago. Had an injury this previous season. In his 3 years at Oklahoma State, including 2 years ago where he was number 1 in the country, he has 203 tackles. We're bringing over Brian McCoy from Akron, who has 239 tackles in his 3 years at Akron. He was a projected 5th-round pick coming out of Akron, but he firmly believes that he can kind of uptick that even more at Oklahoma State. Same exact size as Nick Martin, almost the same speed, same style of player. So we took 6 foot, 230-pound Nick Martin, who was number 1 in the country in tackles, and now we got another individual that put up almost the same exact numbers to replace him. So I think Brian McCoy is going to be a massive addition. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't accidentally slide in Shadavian Bradley as well. Number 1 JUCO player in the country, former 5-star, went to Tennessee, couldn't quite get big enough for them to play their 4-man front. So he goes the JUCO route, ends up number 1 in the country. Now he is up to 242, which is actually the target goal Tennessee needed him to be to start there. So, we get to reap the benefits.
All right, man. Now the big question: win-loss total 2025 Oklahoma State Cowboys. What say
Man,
you?
just without looking at all the other teams shot in the dark, I projected 10 to 11 wins last year, and that really hit me. So I'm going to play it safe. I think 7-5
Okay,
is
that's what
a
I
good
thought you were
bounce
going to
back
say.
season.
Okay, well, that's bowl season, and it sure beats what happened in Stillwater just a few months ago. Cody, thank you very much for coming on the show. This is fun. We'll talk some Texas recruiting and Oklahoma recruiting as we get a little further into the recruiting cycle. But for now, tell everybody where they can find your work and what you got going on with Oak State.
Absolutely. Yeah, just check out the Locked On Oklahoma State show. That's on, all of the podcasting, all the YouTubes, all that fun stuff. Additionally, if you want to see what I have going on X, it's at All Day O State. If you're in the Texas area, I do a lot of traveling and recruiting and scouting for Prospect Sports and Epic Sports. So feel free to reach out and we'll grab a beer, grab a burger.
All right, man. And you can find the platform on the same places that you can find Cody at the portal. And this is going to be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. Like, subscribe, share this podcast. We will see you again soon on the portal.